Welcome back to Diaspora's Media. Please like, comment, share, subscribe. Um, we're back. So not only do I already know reparations are not really a realistic thing, but I actually believe that there's something even better that can be done, right? Um, and this is something that is the second part of the conversation because everybody thinks reparations is from a handout perspective, right? And you know what? Why must we give this handout X, Y, and Z, right? Um, I want a handout too, but I actually think that there's something that can be far more productive um, and far more impactful, even just by seeing its results in uh, kind of like a mock environment such as the Sahel, right? But I think something that could be more impactful is hands off, right? Complete hands off policies, no more foreign involvement, right? No more foreign manipulation, no more foreign control. That is not a handout, right? Quote unquote. That is also quite feasible, right? And let's look into what the research states about this, right? Let's actually just blow this up. No, we're good right there. So foreign control of African economies today is primarily exercised through neo-colonialism, right? Didn't Kwame Nkrumah talk about that? Did he or did he not speak about this ages ago, right? Neo-colonialism is what Africa is headed towards, right? Let's continue. Where former colonial powers and new global players influence sovereign states via indirect economic and political means. While direct military rule has largely ended, control persists through monetary systems, debt-based financing, and dominant stakes in critical resource sectors. Key mechanisms of foreign economic influence. Monetary systems, right? We got the CFA franc. Historically, member nations were required to deposit up to 65% of their foreign reserves in the French treasury. So that's not a handout. That's just stopping us giving Europe a handout, right? So let's go. Recent reforms still mandate that reserves be kept in euros, et cetera. Debt and international finance, debt traps, high interest loans from foreign nations and institutions like the International Monetary Fund, right? IMF is definitely predatory. Loan conditionalities, financial aid is frequently tied to structural adjustment programs that force nations to adopt neoliberal policies, such as privatizing state assets, which can favor foreign corporations over local industries. So, you don't necessarily have to give money. How about stop, um, you know, influencing the entire political sphere of a country, right? Critical minerals. Foreign firms dominate the extraction of oil, gas, and minerals like cobalt and lithium. For example, the French company Orano, formerly Areva, has historically controlled over 30% of France's nuclear energy supply through uranium mines in Niger, right? So now China, European Union, United States, UAE, Russia, these are major global players in their impact, right? Economic role and strategy, right? China holds 18% of Africa's trade share. Crazy. European Union controls roughly 14% of the trade market, right? United States overtook China as the largest source of foreign direct investment in 2023, investing 7.8 billion compared to China's 4 billion. Current strategy focuses on critical minerals, right? So these investments are not to help but to extract, right? The UAE, emerging as a massive investor, recently cited as the single largest investor in specific regions like Zambia due to stable business environments. And then Russia increases influence through primarily through paramilitary groups like Wagner, often receiving mining concessions for gold and other resources in exchange for security services to juntas, right? So, and that can be advantageous in certain spheres. Um, but now resource sovereignty is a shift, right? In 2025 and 2026, several African nations have begun pushing back against foreign control to reclaim economic agency, right? And that's something that we've seen in the Sahel, as they state right here. But my next question was this: for everybody who claims reparations is so impossible, this is not impossible, right? What would releasing these foreign constraints do for the sovereignty and economic growth of individual African states, right? Releasing foreign economic constraints would fundamentally shift African states from a model of resource extraction to one of value creation, right? This transition would allow nations to capture more of the wealth generated within their borders, directly fueling infrastructure, social services, and industrialization, right? So this clearly would have a big impact on the continent. This would have a big impact on our ability to do for self, right? This is not a handout. The reason why the disingenuous discussion about reparations is so disingenuous is because the alternative to repair and restore these communities would be to abstain from extracting these resources, to abstain from destroying the blood and the governments of the nations, right? That would be the alternative. But that's not something that people want to do either, right? And so it's a disingenuous discussion, right? Policy autonomy, right? Reducing reliance on IMF and World Bank's loans would remove onerous conditions that often mandate the privatization of state assets and assurity measures. Governments could prioritize industrial policies like Nigeria's 2025 Tax Reform Act that subsidize local factories instead of rewarding raw material exports. Strategic bargaining power. Nations could negotiate as equals with global powers, with US and China, right? And this is, again, lost my spot, but you guys know what the deal is when it comes to that. My point, you can go and read that. You saw what I Googled, you saw what the AI repopulated back. But we can talk about getting handouts and people can spin this however way they want to. But something that would do much better than reparations, not just for now, but in the long run, but would have an immediate effect without having to disseminate any resources, would be to tell the imperial powers to respectfully be hands off. Be hands off from now on, right? But again, you'll see people in the comments, you'll see people all around still trying to make an argument, right, that this is such a difficult thing and that everybody has gone through the same thing. No, the amount of foreign control is not even remotely the same, right? And so just like, comment, subscribe. Let me know what you guys think. And, we'll see you on the next one.